coming up next on The Mikey Martin Show.
And you'll notice your productivity is a lot less.
You should schedule your priorities, because if you don't schedule something, it doesn't happen.
You might start out strong, you might hit 1 or 2 hours, and then like you're just gonna crash and have 2 hours of Netflix binge or YouTube shorts. I don't know. When I was 11, my dad passed away, and so during that time I really hit rock bottom. It was really hard for me to cope with that.
I would recommend taking every opportunity you can and scheduling those important things. Well, and it's funny because now as a med student, I think we're taking about 26 credits. You're in a class with a bunch of people who are also high performers, and I realized you have to find a way to not burn out. The way I like to put it, you can't beat someone who never gives up.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we have a special guest. His name is Sam Weeks. He's actually a friend of a former guest on the show, Luke Wright, if you guys remember him. Sam is a medical student. He's currently studying at Liberty University Medical School, and he's commissioned with the military. He'll be working with them after he's done there. He's an avid investor. He's going to be getting into the real estate game soon. Always, working towards his future. Sam, we're super excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You guys, Sam's a really, really cool guy. He's a high performer. He really lives his life in a way that, he's always trying to do what's correct and what's, the most high value for his decisions. So I'm going to give Sam just a second to kind of introduce himself. Sam, what's your name? What's your brand? And what's kind of your life's mission?
So Sam Weeks, as you mentioned before, my brand, I would say I'm a very motivated go-getter, someone who doesn't give up. And I think that's kind of the message I carry to people whenever I'm working with colleagues or other students, is I'm a very big motivator. I like to instill confidence and hope into people, helping them achieve what they thought they couldn't. And I'm also competitive, and I think the combination has led me to really try and achieve as much as I can.
That is so cool. And I guys, I can't wait to get into this. I want to know why, because guys, the more we get to know Sam throughout this, the more you're going to get to see that he really takes life seriously. He knows this isn't a dress rehearsal. This is opening night, and he's here to play, So Sam, that's such a sweet thing. And I kind of want to get into this because I know that with you wanting to, do all the amazing things you just mentioned, it adds a lot of pressure, or at least people, tend to encounter a lot of stress and anxiety as they really start to push themselves, and not just for themselves, but to help other people. What do you do for recovery? And more specifically, how do you actually do it? What's the focus or the tone of that recovery?
Something that I've started since I was 14 is really getting involved with exercise, particularly with weights. And more recently, I've probably become more balanced, adding in cardio and other ways to improve my health. But it's something that I found really early on to be an outlet for me. It's something that originally I was really bad at. I grew up as a very skinny kid, and I had a dream as a little 14-year-old that I wanted to be big and strong, and always wishing I could be there. And it was funny because I'd work out for years and it looked like I hadn't. I felt like progress was really slow, but it's something that I never gave up at. And now it's really my outlet, and it's really fun to see people who are either starting at the gym or who have been lifting, and they see me. And it's funny, amongst some of my buddies that I lift with, they call me a menace, and they're like, "Oh, Sam, he's a menace." When they see me put 455 and do 6 reps on squats, they're just like, what is happening? But it's not because I'm naturally gifted. I think it's because I haven't given up. And I think that's kind of, as I mentioned before, my message has a lot of talent. I do think I do have talent, but I think it's something that I just haven't given up, and it's something that I keep working at. And so I think that's one of my major forms of recovery is exercise and being able to do something that I love. And I think very important in whatever you're doing that you make time for those things that are important to you. I've heard that you should schedule your priorities, because if you don't schedule something, it doesn't happen. And so in addition to exercise, another thing that's important to me is time with my family. And especially as a med student, when my time has become even more scarce. It was funny because as an undergrad student, when I was taking 15 credits and working 20 to 25 hours a week, but it was manageable. And it's funny because now as a med student, I think we're taking about 26 credits, and it's crazy how much less time you realize you have once you double your study volume. It's like, oh, how can I do this? And so one thing I learned is you can't learn everything. And you're in, you're in a class with a bunch of people who are also high performers working their best. And I realized you have to find a way to not burn out, to make time for your family, schedule in those important things, your workout, your spiritual time. So that way you can keep moving forward and keep that consistency. Because the way I like to put it, you can't beat someone who never gives up. So
I love that. That really seems to be your mantra: consistency, hard work, not giving up, really knowing what your core, I guess, priorities are so that you can actually really make time for those. That's great. Well, hey, let's ask you really quick, because you're in medical school. I want to know, with that many credits, it's got to be, I think we have a lot of, our majority of listeners right now are kind of in their 20s. So a lot of them are either in school still or kind of getting the hang of their new job. Do you have any, recommendations or tips that you use to have more effective study and make sure that you do get the core really important things that you need to learn?
Yeah. So I guess different parts to your question. First, what I'd recommend to those in that position, I would recommend taking every opportunity you can, because you never know what opportunity will be an advantage to you and what doors that'll open. I remember when I first started at BYU, I was looking to get some patient exposure and ended up working in a position where I didn't think it was, you could say it's not a very high ranked position working as a CNA, but it's because I started that opportunity. And then I met one of my coworkers who was working at the hospital in the emergency department. And that sounded really cool with the stories they were telling me. And so they were able to hook me up. I had an interview. It went really well. And then I was able to work in that position. And not only was that a really good experience with the stories I had, but also it put me in a position to where when my patients were sleeping or there was that downtime, when they were sleeping, I had to still work on homework. And I think finding a way to maximize your efficiency, which comes back to planning, something we talked about earlier, that if you can really take the hours in your day and where you're spending it, you can better analyze, oh, here's time where I'm wasting time, or here's time where I could better use this time. Like, this is time that's kind of disappearing from me. And when you plan your day, then I feel like you don't waste time. And I'm not saying that you can't do things that you love, like, oh, you can never watch TV, or, oh, you can never do this. Something funny is I'm in medical school, and almost every night, most nights, my wife and I will watch something together, or we'll play games at night. And someone's like, how can you do that as a med student? But something that we decided really early on in starting medical school is that every day, no matter what,
that we're going to spend 2 hours together, no matter what happens. And so usually for us, that's between 5 and 7 p.m. And so I'll get up usually around 5 a.m. I'll start studying. I'll have breakfast, start studying, and then go to class if I need to, or study from home if I can. And then I'll have my workout, and then I'll come home at 5, and then we'll have dinner. We'll either watch a movie or time with the baby, or we'll play some card games or whatever it is that we want to do. And it's time that we've planned and we've budgeted. And so I don't feel guilty when I'm doing that, because that's, for me, my recovery time. It's time that I'm spending with my family, actively choosing to spend that time with her. And then after we have that break, I can go back, get a couple more hours of study, get to bed, and then do it again. And then also I make an effort every week to take her out on a date on Saturday, or when it fits. And then as much as I can, sometimes it's harder than other days. I try to not study on Sunday. I try to make that a day where we can really have time together. And there are times when it's really hard. Like, I've had a funny story is the day our baby was born. He was born on a Tuesday, but my wife went into labor Monday. And so when I got back from school Monday, and we had an exam the following Monday, our exams are most every other Monday. So anyway, I had an exam coming up, and I was like, shoot, so we didn't end up studying at all Monday, because, she went into labor. We're at the hospital all night. And then by the time I got home Tuesday, I was like, shoot, now it's Wednesday. I'm basically a week, this X amount of time behind. And so that was a really rough week. But in general, I try to plan the time I'm going to spend with my family in a way. And I feel like by doing that, you're really able to set yourself up for success.
Well, and I'm curious, because the thing is, I think everybody's, amazing. I love how you're budgeting your time, how you're really setting those time blocks in there, and how you stick to them. I think that's huge. And I think going to medical school can be either awesome or it can be a total just terrible time, depending on if you can really learn to actually live through it or if you're just dying the whole way. Because if you're going to be doing medicine forever, guys, you got to really, and in anything, if you're going to really get deep into something and really devote a massive amount of time and attention to it, you need to learn to do exactly what we're hearing from Sam. Learn to take time, learn to take breaks, let your brain rest for a second. A big study that they did was that it was like, if you can take even just a 5-minute break every 25 minutes or so, your brain is going to be able to actually pick up information a lot better and store it better. And especially with good sleep, it helps take those short-term memories and turn them into long-term memories. Sam, do you get good sleep? Do you have a specific schedule with that? I know you're working out. Are you a sleep at night and then work out in the morning, evening?
So in the past, when I was at BYU, I usually always worked out in the morning. I think right now I work out in the afternoon usually because it fits my schedule best. And
Great.
I have someone that I work out with, and I highly recommend getting a buddy to work out with. It's more motivating. You can push each other more and you can really enjoy more of it. And so we usually go after class before I head home for dinner. And so that just seems to work best for us. And it seems to be when it's less crowded, because sometimes in the morning, everyone wants to go there in the morning. And so just trying to find what works best for you. So some people are like mornings the best, and I've done that in the past. You mentioned the 5-minute 25. I thought that was funny because something we call in med school the Pomodoro effect, but basically where you study 25 minutes or you work hard for 25, you take 5-minute break to repeat that process. That's something that I've been doing since the beginning, and especially when I'm doing my flashcards is I'll have 25 minutes of as intense as I can, go through as many flashcards as I can, and then take 5 minutes, spend time with the dog, the family, the baby, relax, come back, hit it again. And you really do get more done because you're spending focused high intensity time rather than distracted time. And obviously I've tried both. When you try to do flashcards when a show's going on, maybe you're not in the same time crunch. Like right now I'm on spring break, which is really nice, but you might not feel that same pressure. Like, oh, I'll just do some flashcards while I'm watching a show, and you'll notice your productivity is a lot less. You might a lot lower quality in what you're getting done. Whereas if you spend your time focusing, okay, 25 minutes focused, 5-minute break, 25 focused, 5-minute break, and then you take a lunch break or whatever it is, you really get more done during your 25 minutes and just overall than if you're to try to have distracted productivity.
What's the name for that again that you guys have for it?
Oh my goodness, Pomodoro effect.
Pomodoro.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's it, because Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, and I'm pretty sure I remember it came from something in there. We're gonna Google it right here, guys.
Yep, there it is, the Pomodoro timer, and I have one on my computer that I'll set. It'll do a 25-minute timer, and it'll go while I'm studying. And
that's awesome. Tell me, because you're saying you're going hyper focused on your flashcards during that time. What a lot of people have a hard time focusing, and frankly, it's difficult to just straight up focus hard on something for 25 minutes. Is it just practice that has helped you get good at that, or is there any other tips or anything that do you have to be in a quiet room or?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I would definitely recommend being in an environment that's conducive to study. So if there's a lot of distractions, really loud roommate, I would find somewhere where it's quiet, whether that be the library or your own room. That's why I have this basement around me that's pretty nice.
Sure.
And then as far as like being able to study, I'd find what works best for you. In the past I've tried music. Sometimes you could get distracted by the lyrics of the song or the music. Right now, usually I'm listening to, just usually silence, but on my flashcard app, I use Anki plugin for that. Highly recommend for those going to medical school or just studying in general. It's a really good flashcard app. It has its own algorithm of determining when you need to see your flashcards next, but they have a lot of add-ons for the Anki program. And one of them is it's like a speed focus timer, or like where you can set a certain timer for like for example, for me, I typically take 10 to 15 seconds on a flashcard before I flip it. And so if my average or slowest average is 15 seconds, I can set that as a timer. And so then after 15 seconds, it'll flip it for me. And then it'll give me an alarm, and then it'll flip it. And then if I don't do anything within 5 seconds, then it'll click again, as in I need to see the card again. And why that can be helpful is sometimes when you're studying, your mind can get distracted. You might be thinking about something else, whatever, whatever
Life.
it may be. And so sometimes
Yeah.
you'll hear that alarm like boop, and you're like, oh shoot, like gotta focus back here. And so sometimes it can help
Nice.
just to keep you focused. And I think having that 25-5, when you know you're gonna have a break and you can do whatever you want for those 5 minutes, I think it gives you something to look forward to. Because if you're to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to study for 3 hours without stopping, like it's not going to happen. You might start out strong and you might hit 1 or 2 hours, and then like you're just going to crash and have 2 hours of Netflix binge or YouTube shorts. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you give yourself 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break and then you go back, you do that 6 times, you've done 3 hours. And so I think it's a lot more focused productivity time you can spend with that.
I love
So
that. Well, and another thing I really, really like about that is just that a lot of the time when I'm studying or I'm working on something, I'll have something in the back of my head that I'm like, oh, I need to get that done. And if you know, hey, I've got a 5-minute break coming up, I'll be able to do it then. Then you're not stressing about it all day and being distracted by it while you're trying to get quality work done. But well, let's get into, I love this because guys, first off, if you're a student, you're already loving this. We know you're drooling over it. I mean, this is useful, good stuff that's really going to help you to be an effective learner. So let's get into, I want to kind of ask Sam, I want to get into recovery and ask you, like, is there any time that you have maybe in your high performance lifestyle, have you ever had any kind of a breakdown or anything where you had to make recovery a real priority in order to just kind of come back to where you were at? Maybe, you had a lack of recovery and it led to the breakdown.
I mean, it worked out in the end, the story I'll share, but when I met my wife, it was I think a year before I finished my no, I think I had a year left at BYU. But anyway, I was at some point COVID hit, and then she flew back home to be with her family, and so I was still here, and then I was studying for the MCAT, which is the medical school entrance exam that you have to take in order to apply to med school. And it's a huge exam, a lot of time, a lot of effort studying for that.
A lot of people don't pass it.
Yeah, and it was during that particular time, it was stressful because I was dating my wife, but she was we weren't married yet, but she was living in Maryland. I was stuck in Utah, and my day consisted of waking up at, I think I woke up at 4:15. I would eat breakfast. I'd work out 4:30 to 5:30 because I had a buddy who had to be at work at 6, so we'd work out really early. So work out super early. He'd go no, so he had work at 7, but the reason is my MCAT exam was scheduled, I think, sometime in end of June, but it was started at 6 a.m. And so you're supposed to practice your study frame when you take your test. And so because I wanted to work out before my exam, I needed to practice, or like, I didn't want to work out. I had to practice what I was going to do. And so it just worked out best to work out really early and then start studying at 6 o'clock and then finish in the evening, go to bed really early and repeat. And so I was performing really, really high, like working really hard during that time. But by the time I finished taking that test, I'll be honest, I took a really well-needed break. it was I didn't want to think about school anymore by that point.
Right.
Graduated, I'm done. It was I needed to just relax, and it was nice because we had our honeymoon and much later, and it was great just to not have to focus. And I think sometimes you need that depending on the right situation. But yeah, I think it's definitely important to always incorporate those recovery things. And something that I've never stopped is, since I was 14, I've never stopped working out, and I think that's really helped me manage recovery.
Sure.
And when there's ever instances when I'm unable to get my workout, like I really feel it. And it's funny, something that that I've talked to my wife about, because when we first met, and when I was like, oh, I gotta go do my workout, she's like, hey, like I want you to spend that time with me. And she would feel offended sometimes. And something that we realized down the road is that I'm a happier, like better husband, person, just much more enjoyable to be around. Because there was a time when I want to show her I loved her, and so I'd be with her, but then I was either grumpy or maybe I wasn't as I was just really pent up because I hadn't done anything, just spent all day studying. And she's like, you need to go for a run, and then come back and we'll spend time together, and it'll be a lot better. Because she could tell that I needed to expend my energy somehow.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because we recently got a dog since being here, and she's the same way. If she doesn't get her run, then she's a naughty dog. But when she does, she's super nice. She'll cuddle with you. She's super loving, just great. But she really needs that the outlet. So
it kind of
similar to
balances
me,
out
it's-
your emotions and just kind of
yeah,
energy level and whatnot. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah, no, I think it's big. Have you ever had a time? Because guys, if you're a big gym person, a lot of the time you get a lot of wear and tear, and if you aren't recovering properly, you'll get injured. Or even if you are recovering properly, sometimes you're just pushing it too hard, you get injured. And this is the worst thing for gym people because then it's hard to work out and it's hard to get rid of that energy. Do you ever have I mean, what kind of recovery do you do for the gym, Sam?
It's funny that you bring that out because I've worked through too many injuries. In fact, when I was in Peru, I actually partially tore my left pectoral muscle, and that was really, really hard.
You tore
Especially
your left pec?
yeah, it wasn't a full tear because they ended up not doing
Sure.
surgery. But if it was like, if this is my pectoral muscle, I tore like, I don't know, like 2/6 or something. So not quite a third, maybe like 2/7. So like tore some of it, and you can see it when I flex it. Like, you can see where some of it's missing. But
Wow.
like since it happened back in, what was that, 2018, like I've recovered a lot to where now I can still bench fine. But initially, like there was probably 6 months of like I wasn't able to lift what I used to, and that was really frustrating for my own. And it makes you really grateful for what you could have been able to do. And so now I really make sure I
Absolutely.
warm up on everything and try to take it slow. And sometimes if you need to take a day off or work a different muscle group, like I do that. It's better to think long term. And sometimes I'm lifting and it's like, oh, I'm still hurting. It's sometimes it's not even because like I've been working out too much. But it may be that I'm not recovering enough. I'm not sleeping enough because I try to make an effort to sleep 7 hours a night. But I'll be honest, there's some times when that doesn't happen and like your body starts to feel it. Like
Absolutely.
if there's a couple days where I'm sleeping less than 7, like let's say 6.5, 5.5, then your body starts to feel it. And sometimes you're like, oh, I'm not as fresh going into this workout. And so you either make time to be well or you're going to make time to be sick, to not
Well,
be
and
well.
you, again, like you said, you start to appreciate that slow and steady path where you're just like, it's progress, definitely progress, but I'm not willing to take another 6 months off and lose all my progress that I had
Yeah.
already made. And I think, I mean, not even in the gym, everybody does that in life too. I mean, you'll push yourself. I mean, after taking the MCAT, like you had to take a break. Like, I mean, you're pushing yourself to your limits here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's a huge thing. Do you do, and again, we've actually, another theme that I think you've really been showing a lot in this is preparation. I mean, you're talking about stretching before the gym. You're talking about all of this stuff that you do to set yourself up for success, whether it's, using the different websites to help you out, making sure your environment is good, blocking out your time. There's a lot of preparation going on here. Is there any specific preparation that you feel like really changed your life? Maybe you needed less recovery, maybe?
Something I'd recommend is always take what you can from your peers and from those who have done what you want to do, because I feel
Nice.
like you can always get nuggets of knowledge and help from that. As a medical student, I'm always talking to second years and to those who have been in my shoes and getting what worked for them, what they'd recommend. And also as you're trying things, if something works, keep doing it. If it doesn't, try something new. You don't have to stick with one thing. Like it's not a one trick pony. Find what works best for you, whether that's in school, in success. Find
Sure.
what will bring you the most for your time. And
Love that.
I think you had a second part to your question. Sorry, I must have missed it.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
does it help you with needing less recovery?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think they often say failing to plan is planning to fail. Budgeting when you're going to spend your time and how, I think, makes a huge difference. One,
Absolutely.
planning your breaks as well as what you're going to do. Sometimes as a student, it's pretty easy when you have structured lectures and like, okay, I'm going to finish this lecture and then I'm going to study it and then I'm going to do the next one. So sometimes it's organized like that, but sometimes for an entrepreneur or somebody else, they may not have quite as fixed of a schedule. So sometimes you need to make that yourself. And even as a student, it's important to schedule in your priorities and then also make sure you schedule enough time to finish your studies so that you can get those done and then you can have that time that you need to recover. So
I love that. Well, and I like the thing is you're a really interesting guest to have on because you started so young. I mean, you're starting in the gym at 14, which is a great time to start. But, I mean, you're starting young and you're getting to see the long-term game because you've been doing the gym for years now. And I think, as soon as you start making the gym a regular part of your life, I think most people notice it really influences everything else you do. And it kind of makes you see things differently, especially when you're seeing that, hey, long term, I win. If I do 6 hours of abs today, I will not have a six pack. But if I do a good whatever ab workout every day for 6 years, I definitely will. And so I think as far as medicine goes and everything, I really like that you're looking that long term. How old do you think you were when did you start learning about recovery? You think maybe before you were even 14, or was that kind of maybe where that started?
Probably sometime around there. I mean, I feel like, yeah, it was around that time that I really had a flip in my whole like life dynamic, because when I was 11, my dad passed away, and so during that time I really hit rock bottom, and I think I didn't really know what recovery was then. I didn't really have, it was really hard for me to cope with that. But thanks to family, friends, church, like, you start to make progress, find things that really can ground you, and then finding ways that you can learn to cope. And I feel like also, like, having experienced difficult things in the past help you to, deal with difficult things in the future. And also, I've had friends who've gone through tough things, and having been there, you can better help them. And having a close network, I think, is also pretty important, that I learned outside of it. And even now, like, my wife is a great a great source of recovery, because there's been days when come home and it was a bad test or just rough day or just exhausted, and having someone you can go to, whether that be family, friend, spouse, who can just sometimes even just listen, or even just hold you, someone that you can just you can be with, I think is huge. Because as much as I love the gym, there's definitely some recovery I get from my wife that can't be replaced. And so I think that's also important. And it's finding your person, whoever that may be, who can listen to you. So
I love that. Well, and can we go a tiny bit into that? Just like,
yeah.
when I mean, because I think a lot of people agree with that and totally would say that their spouse is probably their greatest form of recovery, maybe besides like a good night's sleep or something. But like, it's so nice to have somebody as a support. Is it mostly that you can just talk to her? Is it, I think a lot of people tend to feel that support through their love languages, whether it's, getting a good hug or encouraging words or whatever that is, just time. What is it about your wife that really helps you to recover?
I mean, I could say all of those. I think a big thing, that a quality she has, and also a really close friend of mine who we mentioned before, Luke, had as well, is being a very good listener. Because sometimes sometimes you might not want to talk, you're just feeling bad, and you don't want to talk, and they can see that, and they can open you up and get you to express what you're feeling, and then they can also talk to you and give you that that encouragement or the kick in the butt that you need to get you going
Yes.
again. And so and that's something that before I met my wife, like, that was another benefit I had working with Luke, is oftentimes we'd help each other out of ruts. When one of us is feeling down, the other one will, one, listen, encouragement, but also, get them back on their feet so that they can keep achieving, and not stay in that tough spot. And so I think having that's important. It doesn't mean that you have to, it's like, oh, I can't have encouragement unless I'm married. It's finding someone who can listen, who has those qualities, that good friend, or someone who's willing to listen. And also sometimes, you need that kick in the butt to get you back on your feet, because sometimes you're just wallowing in self-pity, and you just need to focus on the future, because you can't change the past, but you can definitely affect your future.
Man, right now I'm right on that edge. I'm so tempted to make the title of this one, "Recovery Can Be a Kick in the Butt," or something like that. I think that's such a good thing to let everybody know, that sometimes recovery is getting that sharp refocus, whether that's a kick in the butt or just dealing with reality, however you find it. I think that's a huge point. Well, and can I ask you also, because I think that's so cool that you would say, hey, my wife is a huge support to me. I think especially when you experience, the death of a parent, I think you really begin to treasure those relationships a lot. Is there, I mean, I feel like there's got to be some listeners out there that have dealt with similar things. Was there anything, what, like you said, it's really good to have a supportive network. Was there anything, because you were really young, but you're old enough to know what's going on. Was there anything specifically that helped you maybe emotionally or kind of spiritually recover from an experience like that when you're so young?
Family is very important. I think when my dad had passed away, I don't think I was working out yet. I think I wanted to work out and I dreamt of it, but I think I was too in love with my mint chocolate chip ice cream I had every night and other delicious habits. But I think
Nice.
it's really really important to so I think sometimes to be willing to open yourself up. That's something that I've definitely learned over time. I have a really close cousin who I'd call all the time, and even now we still call and we'll just talk. And he's another really close friend who I've opened up to at this point. But it's funny because back then I've always been a really closed kind of book. I never really opened up, and that's something that friends and family have really helped me do. And now I'm almost the opposite. I talk about just about anything, and I think it's something that
Wow.
I've really developed because um, I didn't used to be a big talker, and now I can talk most anybody's ear off with just
So
something
finding
that I've worked
somebody that
on.
you could confide in, talk to, open up with.
Yeah, and also I'd say another thing for me is for me church has always been something very beneficial. And I don't
Huge.
know how many of your listeners are, but I know that finding something, whether that be a whatever higher order you believe in or just whatever spiritual recovery, you can find something that you can turn to that can keep you grounded. Because both when that happened as well as time I spent in Peru, that was difficult, and even now having something you can turn to spiritually to give you that recovery, that strengthening that you need. Um because that's why there's so many different kinds of recovery, because there's some things you may not get from the gym, and sometimes you need that the other source of grounding. So
Absolutely. Wow. Well, I think that's huge. Thanks for talking about it. Man, I think, anyway, let me ask you this because I'm curious because the thing is, man, you're a really cool guest to have on today. You've really, I think it's so amazing that you went from being a really closed book to a really open one. And I'm thinking that that's a huge reason that you're such a high performer. And because a lot of people, especially when they aren't willing to, and not saying this is from you, but a lot of people aren't willing to open up because they're scared that they did something wrong, that they'll be seen as a failure, that, failure's bad, or they didn't do
mhm.
it like somebody else thought they should. And because they're not willing to open up, they don't get the advice that they need. And also, typically, they're not really being real with their situation, or perhaps they're not seeing their situation for what it really is because they're only seeing it from their perspective. And I think
Mhm.
opening up really helps you to, one, see it for what it really is, two, think through it, and then three, really get kind of a solution and move on. And just creating that kind of a neural pathway in your brain of, hey,
Yeah.
here's a problem, let's analyze it and find a solution. That's a great way to become a high performer.
A story comes to mind, if it's okay if I share.
Of course.
In sixth grade, up until that point, I didn't really care about school. I'd say I probably wasn't very motivated. And there was a certain test we had to take, and just like you do in school. And I remember my teacher pulled me out after. Actually, I think it was fourth grade. Sorry, not sixth grade, fourth grade. And
Sure.
my teacher pulled me out afterward, and like brought me in and said, "Hey, like Sam, you're better than this. Like I want you to take this test again and show me, because I know you're better than this." And it was kind of that kick in the butt that I think I needed then, because in that moment I didn't really care about school. I was kind of in my own rut, own place, and it was probably some of the effects of my dad passing. But she's like, "Hey, I know you're better than this. Like sit down and do this right." And then it was a little bit after that when I started junior high, and I was signing up with classes with my buds, when they were all taking like, oh, we want to do honors classes. And at first I was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to, just get by. And I thought, oh, maybe I am better than this. And then I
Mhm.
began to try, more difficult classes, and I struggled, but I started to get better and better. And then I ended up, getting better, better until I started high school. And at that point I was like, okay, I had this kind of elite mindset, and it was like, okay, I'm going to get straight A's. And I did in high school. But it was funny, when I met Luke, I remember my first interaction with Luke, like talking person to person. I think he was looking at his grades, and I sat next to him, and I was like, oh my goodness, he had like 99s or 98s on all his classes, and I was getting all A's, but I was like barely getting A's. Like I was working my tail off. And I remember when I saw him, and I said, wow, I was like, oh, like, that's pretty good. He's like, yeah, I like to keep a high A, is what he said. I was like, oh, really? And I thought, this punk, I'm gonna show him a high A. Let me kick his butt. And so it kind of became a
Uh,
fueling competition between us. And
I love
in all
that.
kinds of things, we've always motivated each other in the gym and school, and now even in life, and pushing each other to really go for more, because you need, sometimes I think a little healthy competition can help stimulate some motivation. But
I
I
love
think
that.
just also part of my personality, I've always been a very, well, scratch that, I haven't always been a very motivated person. But I think having that change of mindset, in realizing that I am better than this, and knowing that I can kind of prove people that I can, become better, that I can change that, by not giving up. And I think since that moment, it's really helped pivot me to keep pushing myself to keep becoming better.
Man, well, what's your mental dialogue? What's your self-talk when it does get tough and you want to help yourself remember that you can become better by not giving up?
um,
Is it just that competition? Is it that I'm better than this? Is it I've got to beat Luke?
I mean, I'm sure it's changed in different points in my life. In the past, I think I always kept in mind my goal and where I wanted to be. And so when I was in high
Nice.
school, my goals, I wanted to get straight A's, and so that was my goal. And so I I do everything I could, and like, yeah, like, it can get tough, but I remembered I wanted to get there, and I was willing to push myself till I could.
Sure.
And then in college, it was, I wanted to get into medical school. And so I'd make those sacrifices I needed to get to that point, and having that kind of end goal, something that I'd kind of set for myself. And so sometimes for me that meant not going to parties that other people were going to, and making those sacrifices now so that I can reach that goal. And not saying that I only studied, but I just, I knew what my priorities were, and I knew the sacrifices I was willing to make to get there. And now it's a little different, because in med school, like, it's more like get through medical school, and then, go to residency and stuff, but like make it through the whole time. So it's kind of finding that balance I found for me right now, where it's still need to perform at that high level, but now I'm realizing that there's so much material that I can't learn everything, but I need to learn enough, and keep that consistency, by having that balance with my family, with my hobbies, with my own other forms of recovery. Because if not, you're going to burn out, and then you're not going to be there. And sometimes, if you need to take a day off, whatever it may be, like, take it, but it's get back up on the horse and be ready to work.
I love that. Well, and I love that lifestyle. I mean, if you're going through medical school, like I hope you learn medicine, like, because if a doctor's working on me, I want him to know his stuff. But, I think it's such a healthy lifestyle that, because for instance, I know a lot of people that they just love learning, or they feel like they can't actually act on it until they know 110% of it. And so it's
Hmm.
like the fact that you're supposed to live this lifestyle where you have to learn the important things, but then it makes you move on. I really, really like that. Just because, guys, you're not going to learn 100% of it until later, until you actually start applying things, and until you actually start seeing it from other perspectives, or hearing from other people, their perspectives later on. So getting in that habit of just learning something and then moving on, even if you don't fully, know everything about it, I think is super cool. Super cool.
And on that same note, I think you'd be amazed at how much you can learn. Like your brain is very adaptable.
Yeah.
Your capacity to learn grows. It's funny. I look at undergrad and I thought I knew how to study or I thought I could learn really quickly. And then I think of how much material I can learn in a day since being in medical school. It's you literally adapt and you get better at learning the more you do it. And
Amazing.
so just plug that
Guys, your
in.
body's
So
amazing. Well, and the thing is, it's exponential growth. It's just like people go and they're like, well, and again, guys, recovery is in every step of this. Like if you go too hard at the gym, you're gonna tear your pec, like Sam. If if you and you look at these massive bodybuilders and like you think that they never got hurt once or whatever, they got hurt really bad at the beginning and they just got really good at recovering really well, and that way they can actually put their body through more stress and more, but also recognize that, like Sam, with his brain, his neuroplasticity, his brain goes, wow, knowledge is actually a priority right now. We need to make sure that we're learning and you get better at it. And just like with in the gym, if I'm lifting, it's great. But once I start lifting heavier weights, my rate of progress increases because you're lifting more weight and you can build more mass quicker. And so same thing with your brain. If you really train it, and this is just getting back to the whole point that you guys already know, you can do anything. I mean, and the faster you want to get there and the more correctly you want to get there, just apply better recovery. So, recognize that your brain can be just like Sam's. You can push it. You can start to learn better and faster. And you can really, accomplish anything as long as you're willing to stick to it and really dedicate yourself. And like my favorite thing I think Sam has said on this whole podcast, he really kept his goals right in front of him. That's huge, guys. He always knew what his goal was. Oh, I want to get to medical school. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. He had a clear vision of what he would end up like. With a lot of people, they'll go to the gym, but they have no idea what their end goal is. Whether it's to be able to run a marathon or to look like Rocky, it's like you got to know what that looks like. Which actually, I want to ask you, Sam, and if you want to comment on that, you totally can. But I want to ask a question that's going to lead into visualizing and meditation and mindfulness. Did you have anything you wanted to say on that last part?
Oh, I just wanted to plug in that learning to work through like injury or when you have those dropping moments to get through it, because like I've been injured since. Like there was I think it was just last week, like my back wasn't feeling right, and
Sure.
rather than just stop working out at all, like you do the things you need to help recover, but then work out what you can, because you don't want to. The moment you quit, then you're gonna get that giving up mentality. But it's like, okay, like, oh, if I can't use my legs like I wanted to, maybe I can work out my arms, or maybe I can work out my chest, or find things that you can keep working on. Or maybe maybe your mind is shot from a really tough day of school, but you're like, hey, I can clean the house. Like that doesn't take the same mental power. Like find things that you like, wins that you can get even when you, so that your day doesn't feel like a loss.
Guys, this
makes sense.
Huge. Don't stay down. Find other ways to keep going. Did you guys know, I read a thing, I'm going to say that it's true just because it's my podcast, but I read a thing that it said that Olympians, if they get injured and they can't work out for 2 weeks, they will lose 80% of their potential to compete. Now, that doesn't mean that they lost 80% of their muscle. It just means that consistency, that mind to muscle link, and their routine practices are going to become dull. They're not going to have them as sharp and as ready to compete. They lose 80% in just 2 weeks. So guys, consistency and getting right back up on the horse, that does not mean going straight to bench press after you tore your pec. That means still showing up to the gym, still working on what you can, and getting into recovery and getting on that path back to where you need to go. So
perfect.
Huge point. Have your goals in front of you and never stay down. Always get right back up. Well, and again, one of the ways people do that, meditation or a mindfulness practice. Sam, do you visualize? It sounds like you always know what your goal is, which I think is really good. Do you actually visualize yourself like accomplishing that goal, or with all the stress of medical school, do you do any breathing exercises? Do you do any kind of meditation or mindfulness?
Visualizing for sure. I don't know if I do any particular breathing exercises except for maybe right before going into a heavy squat or a heavy set, but that's
Nice.
that's just to pump myself up. But definitely I think it's important to visualize yourself achieving what you want. I've talked to Luke about this a lot, where if you can't visualize yourself there, how do you expect to get there? Um,
Materially,
period.
physically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to visualize yourself achieving that goal. And I think when you can picture yourself there, then the way in which you get there becomes more clear. And so I think that's the
Huge.
first part, whatever your goal may be, because first you got to see yourself where you want to be. And that's the first step. Like you compare it back to the gym, getting out the door is the first big step. And so if you can picture yourself at that goal, that's the getting out the door. And then making the next steps kind of fall into place. So,
Well, and guys, one of my favorite things is active listening. As if I really am paying attention to what Sam's saying here, I'm connecting all these things from what he's been saying. He's saying you see where you want to be, but if you guys were listening earlier, you heard that he was saying that he'll often go and network with people that are 2, maybe 3 years ahead of him, that are where he wants to be. He'll go talk to all the other medical students. He'll talk to, and so the thing is recognizing that where you're at, being self-aware, and then, seeing where you want to be, and then finding people in between that have done what you're trying to do. That's going to make your rate of progress go through the roof. And frankly, you're going to need less recovery because you're going to run into a lot less mistakes. That goes for, investing, the gym, whatever. So huge point. I love that. See where you want to go. And how do you do that? Do you actually take specific time to do that? Is it through writing it down? How do you do that? How do you see where you want to go?
One, I think, could be talking about it with someone, or also
Nice.
if you have a moment of quiet in your day. I think when I'm making breakfast is a good time of contemplation, because I'm in the morning, I'm up, I'm by myself, and you're just thinking of where you want to be. I think having time to really reflect on what your goals are can be important. It doesn't have to be necessarily setting time to just sit down and think, but it could be while you're eating or driving, because I drive to school most days of the week, and that's 15 minutes where I can think, or even if I know what I want to do, I can even listen to something that talks about that. Like, let's say you have a goal, you're like, I want to learn how to do X skill.
Right.
YouTube, man, you can look something
YouTube,
up,
man.
and you can listen to how they do something. And sometimes, just like finding someone who's done what you want to do, there are a lot of resources out there to help you learn and educate yourself to get those skills, so you can keep improving, keep sharpening your sword, your skills, your talents.
I love that. Guys, it's huge, especially, when you're in the car. Let's just point out, a lot of us at this point, it's not really so much a conscious brain activity as a subconscious brain. Your brain it's just like when you're in the shower or whatever, it's your brain is able to kind of just flow. So it's a really good time to pick up extra stuff. The thing that I love that Sam just said about his visualizing is, one, he'll actually talk about it to somebody. Your words have power. Your words become your actions become your reality. And the other thing is, he said he talks about it in the morning, getting it at the beginning of your day and really setting that tone for your day of what you're aiming to accomplish, where you're headed. It makes it so much easier to actually stay on track, because you're agreeing with yourself that today, when your brain is, let's point out, throughout the day, your brain gets a little more tired, a little less sharp. At the beginning of the day, to just set that tone and say, this is the vision for our day, this is what we're going to do. It's huge. So words and mornings, big stuff. Well, and Sam, this has been such an awesome podcast. You brought a lot of value here. I think it's so cool, and I think it's super relatable for a lot of the listeners. So let me ask you two things, kind of last two questions. One is there, what is a big lesson that you're learning right now in your life? Something that, maybe it's a lesson you've already learned, but you're learning it again. Just something that's big and impactful that you personally are really learning right now.
I guess something relating to school, and I think this applies to really anywhere, but it's you're not alone. When I first
Oh,
started in
yeah.
medical school, I tried doing all the learning on my own, and like, yeah, you are learning on your own. But one thing I realized now compared to when I started is in the beginning, I was trying to make all my own flashcards, do all my own stuff, and I realized, hey, like there's 168 of us in this classroom. What if we work together? And so I'm working right now with I think 4 other students, and we realized like we're obviously all watching the lectures and taking our own notes, but we've been tag teaming, making flashcards on certain stuff. And when you have questions, we also meet up and we can quiz each other. We can study together, find ways to improve each other, because we all want to get to the same spot where I'm trying to
Right.
get through it. And realize that when you work with someone, especially if that person's better than you, they're going to help you become better. You can really improve yourself, and there's no reason in whatever you're doing to think um, that you have to do it by yourself. Like, oh, out let I'm just gonna outwork everyone, which you can do, but when you work with someone, you can even kind of get that boost, that extra the help, and you can benefit each other because it kind of goes back to networking.
Totally.
Because there's some things that you're going to be really good at, and some things that other people are going to be really good at, and when you work together, you can both get really great at both. So
I love that. No, and guys, it's true. I mean, you see it everywhere in every organization. I mean, when Sam's a doctor, he's going to need medical assistants and like physician's assistants and the guy who, you need a whole team to accomplish something really great. And so why not get used to applying it early? Apply it in everything, apply it in your work, especially if you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you already know you only have so much time to run your business, but also to learn new skills. And so learning to actually use other people's skills, other people's time, you know, it's the way to actually get stuff done. So that's a huge lesson. You're not alone, reach out to other people. It'll make you stronger. And then last question here, Sam, and this has been just awesome. Thank you again.
yeah, no
Last
problem.
question is if, and again, I love to stop before the last question, just when I've built all the climax, the anticipation. Is there any book recommendations that you have for the listeners?
Ooh,
Anything that maybe has helped your life, changed your life, or just something that you think is a great read?
um, uh, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think, is a really
Huge.
awesome book. I first was recommended the book from Luke, but it's incredible. Like whatever you're doing, I think that book can benefit you because in any profession you're working with people, and realizing that when you can help someone help their goals become yours, that you can really work together when it may seem, oh, there's no way you can get this person to do what you want them to or to work with you. But if you learn about people, learn how they think, and just a great book in whatever you're wanting to do, I think it'll help you achieve your goals.
I
So
love that. Thank you. Great recommendation, guys. If you've heard of that book more than 5 times and you still haven't picked it up, there's a problem. You should recognize that that is a sign that the universe is telling you you need to read the book. Okay. Well, last question here, guys. Climax, anticipation. Sam, if everybody in the world was going to see this podcast and you got to give them a message, what would that message be?
My mind goes to the quote I put in my high school yearbook: every champion was once a contender who refused to give up.
That's so
So
huge.
yeah,
What does that mean to you?
it to me that means that I've also heard the saying talent uh hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So I think it's not giving up, because you can't lose if you never give up. So whatever your goals may be, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. If you don't quit, you're gonna get there. You're gonna achieve what it is you want. As long as you don't give up, you keep giving yourself that kick in the butt, keep getting up, you keep giving that extra effort, finding whatever it takes, whatever recovery you need, the support system, the network. If you put in the effort, you can get the results. You can get to where you want to be.
I love that. Guys, this has been such an amazing time. Sam, thanks for being on the show. We're going to have to, I can't wait to get more of your insights as you go farther through medical school and life. But anyway, thanks for sharing your time with us, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.